So I've been having a lot of conversations lately with clients about overload and about progression and how they're going to get the most out of their training. And we obviously overload comes down to a bunch of factors. It's nowhere near as simple as what people think. People think, oh, I'm going to add, weight to the bar every week, and that's going to like make me get stronger, make me get bigger. And if that's your view on it, it can lead to some problems. You need to understand that all the factors that lead to an adequate stimulus being applied that's going to make your body adapt, as long as you give it the right environment, enough protein, enough sleep, that sort of stuff. There's a heap. So like the load on the bar is part of it for sure, but proximity to failure, in our case, like what we use to judge that RPE, so how difficult it is, your technique and your technique breakdown, just your fatigue, external fatigue, all these factors and much more come into the stimulus that's applied to the body, and then how it's going to react to that stimulus, if it's going to grow from that or not. And what can happen is when you don't know that picture, and when you get obsessed with just the weight on the bar, and if the weight of the bar not going up, then I'm failing type mindset, is even when things aren't there, you want to push it harder because you don't want to go backwards. You don't want to regress in your mind. You don't want to fail in your mind, even though it doesn't work that way. And so if any of my clients have worked with me for any decent amount of time, they'll hear me say, like, don't force progression. And that's what I mean by that, is that you don't necessarily need to have more load on the bar to be progressing. If fatigue is higher, if you've had a shitty night's sleep, if you've had shitty food the day before, if you've been a little bit sick, if you're just fatigued from previous weeks, if you're sore, whatever it is, the load on the bar might actually go down a little bit, but at the same sort of difficulty, and you're still going to create a stimulus in which your body is going to be able to adapt to and move forward from. So you need to keep that in mind and not try and force progression, because it only lead to you actually getting worse progression, which is kind of ironic.
Because like I was talking to Ollie downstairs about this the other day. He's like, "Oh, I only hit 260, and I really wanted to come in here, and I really wanted to hit 270." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what's the difference between 260 and 270 in terms of overall ability to hold technique, or what you're trying to get out of that particular session?"
Yeah.
Like I was like, the only thing that matters between 260 and 270 is how you mentally feel about that. Physiologically, there is no fucking difference.
Yeah, there can be, but like I try and think about, like, when I'm coming into a set, or when I'm deciding like what weight I'm going to use, or even when I'm programming it for people, I'm thinking, what's the intent behind this set? What do I want from this set? If somebody has not great technique and we're trying to allow for technique gains, I'm thinking I want technique to improve. So I'm going to train a little bit further from failure, and maybe I'm going to give them a few more sets or whatever it is. Like I'm designing the program around a particular weakness or for a particular reason, so that they can get what they need from it. And then if they come in and go like, oh, I can do way more than that, I'm going to add heaps of load, or I'm going to do more than last week, even though I'm a bit tired, it's going to lead to a completely different outcome than what we wanted from it, which was just for technique to be nice and smooth and get good practice in that day. So it's going to lead to the wrong thing. Another thing I wanted to talk about was just that the load not changing on the bar can still be stimulative, can still keep you moving forward. So if you come in this week and hit 100 kilos on the bar, and that's a pretty hard set to you, that moves in a certain way, in a way that you were able to hold good technique, but it was still quite challenging, and you maybe had a couple more reps than you at the end of the sets, and that's what you're programmed. That was the intent for that design slot. Fantastic. If you come in the next week and you're feeling pretty similar, and you work up, and then you don't feel you can go any heavier whilst maintaining that same visualization of what that set should look like, or what we want to get out of that set, doing the same weight isn't a loss. People will think it's a loss because they're like, I've plateaued, or I've gone backwards, or I'm not moving forward. Where in reality, if you think about it, like, you're not gonna, just because you hit it last week and that created a stimulus, if you hit it this week, guess what? It's still going to give you a stimulus. At very worst, it's going to give you slightly less of a stimulus, but it's still be a stimulus. The way I explain this to people sometimes if they think about it in a nutrition sense, it makes a little bit more sense to them in that if they're in a deficit this week and then next week we go, hey, great, that deficit worked really well, your weight's come down or whatever, then next week we remain at the same calories. It doesn't mean like we don't need to keep forcing it harder and harder or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you might lose a little less weight this week, but you're still in a deficit. And it's not the exact same. You can't put the two side by side and go, there is the exact same analogy or whatever, but like people understand it in nutrition that you don't have to change every single week to keep on getting a result. Whereas when it comes to loading weight on the bar, people need to understand like these adaptations are slow. Like you're not getting bigger tomorrow, you're not getting stronger tomorrow. So like you're allowed to change the loading slow as well.
Yeah, for sure.